Welcome to episode 51 of Reading Between the Reels. I'm your host, Craig Dickinson. Tonight, I'm joined once again by special guest co-host Jeff McGee. Thanks for being here, Jeff.
It is my pleasure. I'm very excited about tonight, even more excited than I was last time to talk about Alias.
Well, this time you get to talk about an actual movie, which
yes,
I know that was one of the perks.
No, I get to talk about a movie.
Yes.
This is not a movie. This is a movie.
Yes. Tonight we are talking about Die Hard, which is 34 years old somehow. I don't understand how that's a thing, because it's timeless for me. Love this movie absolutely. So much. So, Jeff, why don't you start us off? What are some of your other overall thoughts on Die Hard?
Well, besides the fact that it's an almost perfect film, the script, I think, is perfect because every little thing gets paid off, which we'll talk about. There's only one part of the movie that keeps it from being perfect for me, and we'll probably talk about it at some point. But, I mean, it's a legitimate classic. I don't know anyone who would argue that. And it's truly one of the best action films ever made. Its reputation is well earned and, dare I say, even underrated. Because as an action film, like I said, it's simply one of the greatest, but one of the reasons it works is because we have compelling and three-dimensional characters and real stakes and drama that is relatable to everyone. And even the smallest characters in the film have an arc. And it's just, it's amazing. It is a work of art. Those are my overall thoughts.
Okay. Yeah, no, I agree. It is, it's funny. It had low expectations when it was released, and I remember being familiar with Bruce Willis from Moonlighting, and so I was a naysayer early on. I'm happy to be proven wrong, but I was like, it's the guy from Moonlighting in an action movie, and this is going to be horrible. And I'm so happy to have been proven wrong, because it is amazing. The critics finally they've got on board after it had a bit of a slow burn too. It didn't was never the number one film that year, but just consistently made money.
It stayed in theaters for weeks and months. And I remember it came out. I'm trying to remember what came out the weekend that it was released. I was more interested in whatever that was, and then I saw Die Hard probably a year or two later, and I was like, oh, this is what I've been missing. And then, as this is one of those movies that you can age with it. As you age, you it's like Back to the Future. As you get older, you appreciate different things about it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. This is also memorable for me because I think the DVD release, the silver cases, was one of the greatest DVDs ever.
Oh yeah, I bought that set when it came out. I paid like $100 for it.
Yeah,
ridiculously.
Me too.
Yeah.
Do you remember, or did you dig into the part where you could actually edit the Takagi execution scene?
I did not. I don't think I knew that was a thing.
It's a thing. You could actually go through, and I think that was one of the things that really sparked my interest in how movies are made, because you got to play with different cuts, different takes rather, and splice together that scene, and it basically any way you wanted to do it. They were in order. You get to pick like 5 or 6 different options and go all the way through, which was amazing just to get to see how that worked.
Yeah, I was more interested in the commentary tracks at that point.
Yeah, good stuff. Who's on John McTiernan on those? I'm assuming.
McTiernan, I think even Bruce Willis was on one of them. I think there were 2 or 3 tracks. It's like McTiernan on one, and then I think maybe Jan de Bont, the cinematographer, was on one as well, or they may have been on one together. And then there were a couple of the actors were on one. I want to say it was one that was kind of stitched together. I'm pretty sure it's on the iTunes release. If the same tracks are on the iTunes release,
I may have to check that out.
They're very informative. A lot of fun.
Yeah. The last thing I want to mention before we kind of dig into the cinematic aspects is that it's based on a book, which you always see that comes up in the credit, which is hilarious.
Roderick Thorpe, which is a great name.
Yep, it's a fantastic name. And one of the fun little trivia things about this is that they technically had to offer the role to Frank Sinatra. Right,
67 years old or something at the time.
Yeah, and he turned it down, thank goodness, because he'd made The Detective, which was the first book in the series, and so it's kind of a sequel to a Sinatra movie, and it starts this whole trend of Die Hard movies have always been like repurposed out of something else, right? And that's just kind of a fun little. That's a trend that starts here and then just continues to move forward. So go ahead.
Have you seen all of the sequels? I've not seen Live Free or Die Hard. No, I've not seen A Good Day to Die Hard. I've seen Live Free or Die Hard. I've not seen the 5th one.
So I bought the 5-pack when it came on Blu-ray, and
I did too, but I still haven't watched the last one.
I think
I
I'd
can't bring
seen
myself.
yeah, I think I'd seen it once before, and I'm my appreciation of Jai Courtney varies. I like to love him in Suicide Squad.
Hmm.
That's about it. But it's if you look at it as a cartoon, it's actually pretty enjoyable. There are some funny stuff. There's some funny lines in there. The action's way over the top. And this is a thing that I think we'll talk about too, is how Die Hard starts as a pretty grounded action movie as far as action movies go,
Hmm.
and then it just progressively gets sillier. And so by the time you get to the fifth one, it's very much like the movie that it kind of broke the mold of, those 80s over the top action movies. This was kind of a more grounded take, and now we're full circle back to that. So it's got some good stuff. I would recommend watching it. I think you'll enjoy some of it if you go in with the expectation of this is going to be silly.
Right, and I'll have to do that. I mean, I'm one of the few people that I actually really enjoy Live Free or Die Hard. The first four I enjoy almost equally. I just, but again, for different reasons. But I'm one of the few people that just almost stood up and cheered when he took down a helicopter with a police car in Live
Yeah,
Free or Die Hard.
that movie's got some great stuff in there.
It really does.
Yeah, the elevator scene with the Ford Escape and the elevator shaft is
Yes.
there's another one. Yeah, it's silly, but it's amazing. But this movie, Die Hard
But I
1,
digress.
yes, no, that's fine. It's all Die Hard related. Had some really interesting cinematography that I think I'd always known, like on a subconscious level, that it was great that way, but I hadn't really paid attention to it until this viewing. And I'm curious what you pulled out from composition, color, and/or camera work.
Well, everything it's on the one hand, it's very classic Hollywood because it's all the compositions are very very I won't say standard, but they're just very classic, very very cinematic. They speak the language of cinema that we all know. But you're absolutely right. The camera does some really interesting stuff. You're almost always seeing it from McClane's perspective. If there are two characters in a room and he can't hear them, we as the audience most of the time can't hear them, or at least not the entire conversation. It'll push into the room and then we'll hear them, which is less about the cinematography. But the thing that I love about the cinematography is the camera work is the fact that throughout it all, you never lose the sense of where you are in the building or in the room. And they did a really good job of that. There's if you notice the recurring motif of the girly calendar that he goes by and he makes reference to every time he goes by. That was brilliant to me because it let you know that by the end of the movie, the route he took around the building. And the way that they used the camera to, again, there are times when it's very kinetic, it's moving a lot. There are times when it's static and we're just seeing things play out in almost real time. But you never forget where you are and you never lose true north in the movie. And I credit Jan de Bont, the cinematographer, for a lot of that. And for being willing to, it almost does have, I say classic Hollywood, but it almost does have sort of a European flair to it, which would make sense because we have, a cinematographer who's not from the United States, not from Hollywood. And we get a few angles here and there that we don't normally get, and it seems a little off, which I think is good because it keeps the audience on their toes. And as far as the color, it's very appropriate and effective. What I love about the color is that when the movie starts, you've almost got this Michael Bay gauzy sunset look to it. And as the sun goes down, we get these really cold and sharp night shots that take us along for the ride. Everything is a little colder and a little cooler. And you see a lot of like blacks and silvers and whites as opposed to those warmer colors that we saw at the beginning. As sort of night descends on the city, night is also descending on this group that's inside as well. And it just always strikes me, and I like I said, I feel like I'm sort of being taken along for the ride by the camera work alone.
Yeah, it's super engrossing in that way, and I'm glad you pulled out the color in that particular way. I had that as well, with that kind of golden sunset, kind of almost golden hour. Which there's also a practical reason for that too, because of how the hours that they had available to film at. This is a Fox building.
I've been there.
Actually, yeah. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Then that makes make that part of the story. Like we have to film during night because they have to get people out of the building. But as far as composition goes, I'm always interested to see things like the way they have people standing in the room. There's one at the beginning. You see Takagi, Ellis, and Holly are on the far right, and John's on the far left, to show
Right.
that he's very much not part of that group. He's been
Right.
separated that
Yeah.
way. And then they leave, and then he and Holly are having a conversation, but they're on opposite sides of the screen. Like it's pulled back pretty far. You can see they're a good 15 feet apart while they're having this conversation about, didn't miss my name though. It's that scene, which I think is just a brilliant way to show that not only are they, I mean, they're emotionally far apart as much as they are physically far apart. So it's just a really kind of a cool, obvious way that they're speaking to us in cinematic language.
It reminds me a lot of a shot. Did you ever see the score with Robert De Niro, Edward Norton, and Marlon Brando?
It's been forever.
There is a shot in that film that this reminds me very much of. Robert De Niro's girlfriend, I think, is played by, I can't remember the actress's name, but she's a flight attendant. And she comes home and he's cooking dinner on one side of the screen and she's in the bedroom, like taking off her shoes and changing clothes on the other side of the screen. And they are at polar opposites. Like if you could not pan and scan that shot and get them both in there. And it's the same thing. It sort of goes to epitomize the gulf between them. And that's kind of what that shot reminds me of as well. Right. That's one that I noticed before I went back and watched Die Hard and was looking at it with that sort of critical eye and noticed that they were doing the same thing here.
Yeah, and then I have to also mention, because I love just seeing it every time, is you get that great shot of Al showing, he shows up at Nakatomi, and then they pan back and you get to see the price of gas. Right. Always slays, because it's like there's not even a spot for the dollar. It's right. Like it's 74 cents for regular and 77 for unleaded. Those were the days. But there's a great example too of the triangle. They have it a couple of times, and the first one that you see is when the two Johnsons show up, and they're on opposite sides of Dwayne Johnson, and he's lower and they're up high. And it's just kind of an interesting way to establish like how much they're taking over. Right, he's definitely been diminished, as he should be. And the last triangle you had is when John enters the room, when Hans has her at gunpoint, and like Eddie, the Huey Lewis lookalike guy, is on the far left, and just a cool way to stage that.
Yeah, John McTiernan does not get enough credit as a director, in my opinion. Even though he has a very good reputation, I still don't think he gets enough credit as a director because of things like that.
Yeah. The other couple things that I wanted to point out, I could get into the weeds something fierce with this, but because I loved it all so much. But I love Hans Gruber's reveal, the way the camera just dollies in on him as guys are kind of just peeling off to left to the right, and then it gets to him, and then it pulls back with him.
Right, and this was cool. This was of course Rickman's first like Hollywood film. Yeah. And immediately it's almost like they gave him a star entrance, because it was like, here, Hollywood, here's your new favorite person on the planet.
Seriously.
And that is my one nitpick. That is my one nitpick. I'll bring it out here. Later on in the film, I believe his name is Curtis, the guy who was working downstairs, working on the cracking the codes on the locks. He drives out in an ambulance out of that van. Where is that ambulance when they're walking out of the van?
Yeah, that would be an issue.
That's the only gimme that this movie asks us to give it. I'll give it because everything else is perfect, but it's so close to being 100% perfect, and that one thing.
Yeah, that's gonna bug me from now on, Jeff. Thanks.
You're welcome. It's what I do.
There's also some positive things. There's also like a lot of kind of almost walk and talk, almost like an Aaron Sorkin thing where you see at the beginning where Holly's walking through, which predates that. I mean, like that's going to be maybe a Tommy Schlamme who directs most of Sorkin stuff. Maybe he was influenced by that, but I pointed out, oh my gosh, because I love that. He just keeps that, again, going back to the geography too. They're walking you through that floor, and you get to see where everything is. And my last favorite thing, camera work, is, because I love Dutch angle so very much. There's a Dutch angle from almost the entire scene when John and Hans meet in person, and Hans is taking on that American accent. It's really obvious, like the whole, like, oh my gosh, yeah, things are not the way they seem. You're supposed to feel a little disoriented in there, and I just love the use.
Well, because they both have the other sort of on their toes. Yep. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, lots of fun. And okay, my last thing, because I gotta mention it. I know, so good. Hans's face in slow motion, that zoom in, because they built a special camera rig I found in my research so that he would not come out of focus as he was falling. So what a great shot that it's done practically.
Right.
You know, like that he actually fell, and the story goes that we're going to go on 3, and then he went on like 2.
They dropped him on 1. They said 1 and then dropped him. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. To get that actual authentic reaction.
Not that they needed to do that because it's Alan freaking Rickman. Come on.
Yeah. That was his first movie. They didn't know. But yeah, he could have done it
right.
in his sleep. Come on. So, Jeff, what about sound? What stood out to you sound-wise?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you. I just finished watching the movie and now I'm deaf. It's very loud.
Yes,
but is. Not. It's not loud, and I'm going to invoke Michael Bay again. And I know a lot of people dump on him, but it's not loud in a Michael Bay way. It's loud because the explosions are appropriately loud. The gunshots would be as loud as they are in the movie, and it is perfect. The gunshots are loud. The dialogue, you can hear all of the dialogue regardless. The sound mix on this is really phenomenal, and even so much, even to go so far as to when he's walking across the glass and you can sort of hear it digging in, and then when he's picking it out, you can sort of hear as he pulls it out, you can sort of hear the skin pulling back, and yeah, between that and like I said, all of the loud explosions along with the score is terrific. The use of "Ode to Joy" and "Let It Snow" in the score, throughout the score, to remind us that this is happening at Christmas time, is just great. And again, all the vocal sounds, the dialogue is great. All of the incidental noises, the grunting and all of John McClane's yelling and everything it's all on point. There's nothing I can say. When it, like I said before, when it doesn't stand out, that's when you know it's good. And this does not stand out in such a way that you're thinking that seems out of place. It all works. And the gunshots, again, I keep going back to how loud the gunshots were. That's what I noticed on my last viewing, is they are like almost annoyingly loud, and they would be, and they should be, because it just sort of helps to raise the stakes in this world. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, and you mentioned McTiernan being underrated. I think Michael Kamen also underrated.
Oh, absolutely.
His soundtrack, the way he intermixes those themes, like you mentioned, you also have get diegetic music. You got guys humming, whistling. Hans does it. You got Al does it too, and it just kind of weaves it through this. And then you hear like "Ode to Joy." You also hear it in like minor keys, and they just play with it. So it's almost this daunting, mysterious, but also kind of foreboding Christmas music, but I just love that full statement of "Ode to Joy" when the vault opens. That's just it's triumphant, but it shouldn't be, but it kind of is.
It is. Well, that's the thing about it, and we'll get into it, but that's the other thing about the movie is the score makes us complicit with the thieves, because we kind of do want them to get away with it, because we kind of love Hans Gruber.
Yeah, we kind of do.
And all of his henchmen are, for the most part, pretty well defined and have their own characteristics, and so you kind of don't mind spending time with these people.
Right. A couple of things that jumped out to me this time is, like, I've never heard an elevator chime be so menacing.
Right.
But when you hear it, you just get your hair goes up, you're on the back of your neck, you're a little bit tense because something bad's gonna happen. And then this time I really noticed, like we talked about the shoes and walking over the glass. When he kicks away the shoes that don't fit, there's this little stinger. That's like, that's going to be important later. There's some foreshadowing there, which is kind of fun. The camera pans down to it too, to let you know exactly why this is important.
But it doesn't linger long enough that it's obvious.
Nope.
It's just, oh, this is what's happening. Here's a transition to whatever we're going to next.
Yeah.
But don't forget about this over here.
Exactly. It pays to watch this movie again. And then you have some really interesting, there's not really voiceover, but there is some just kind of weird television exposition, which reminded me a little bit of RoboCop.
Yes.
Which is funny. And then they have kind of an ironic one where they're talking about the Helsinki syndrome outright as they're pulling Ellis's. That's funny too. They're pulling Ellis's body out of the office where he was killed, as they're talking about how they're going to be bonding with the terrorists and right to them in prison and stuff. Like, I don't know if you guys know what you're talking about.
Yeah, there's a lot of dark humor in this movie, and that's one of the things I respond to with it as well.
Definitely, it's fun. It's just fun. Which I know was one of the things McTiernan was, he turned this down several times because he did not like, he thought it would be too intense and that it would just be depressing and too much. And because they were terrorists at the beginning, but when they
Right.
become thieves, we like thieves in movies. We like to see that happen. We do. We kind of root for those guys, don't we?
It's a heist, and we like heist movies.
We do.
It just so happens that these guys performing the heist happen to be the bad guys.
Exactly. So, anything else for sound before we talk about the performances as?
Well, the only other scene that sticks out to me is the one where Bruce Willis is on the ground, or John McClane is on the ground in the boardroom, and the guy shooting down through the table at him, and he's shooting up. That may be the loudest gunfire in the movie, and again, the Foley work is phenomenal because you hear the particle board from the table breaking as they're going through it. So somehow that cuts through the gunfire as well. Like the debris noise actually cuts through somehow. It's very subtle, but if you listen for it, it's there.
Nice.
So just top-notch work all around.
Yeah, and I heard that was so close to his head that Bruce Willis had hearing damage from that too. So
it wouldn't surprise me. Yeah,
those guns are loud. So I mean, I don't think anybody is anything other than stellar in their performances in this movie. I mean, I have everybody right in a sweet spot. I don't think the movie is what it is. I think everybody's doing what they're supposed to do. I don't have anybody in.
There are a few melodramatic moments. Alexander Godunov, when he finds out his brother is dead, and Hart Bochner as Elvis is pretty over the top. But again, it's the 80s. You knew this guy. This was a real guy, and he was the only one. And I thought it was smart that they killed him in the way that they did, because it's a brutal murder. But after they kill Takagi, you're thinking, okay, these guys are real. And after they kill Ellis, you kind of don't blame them. You kind of think I would have probably done the same thing.
Yeah, he's a
but I love that McClane still tried to save his life, even though he didn't. He kind of detested him. And same with William Atherton. He's almost a caricature, but he's such a pro that it doesn't bother me here. It works. Again, that we know this guy.
Yeah, we do. And he's kind of riffing on his character from Ghostbusters a little bit.
Exactly. He said for a long time he could not walk down the street in any city because people just hated him. Yeah. Because they knew him from Ghostbusters, they knew him from this, they knew him from Real Genius. He does that part so well. But you talking about everybody being in the sweet spot. I mean, Alan effing Rickman and Willis they've never been better. They were Rickman. I would say Rickman was never better than this, but that's because he was always this good. He was always amazing. And Willis, again, what is the thing with, like, if Bruce Willis in the movie, if he has hair, it's probably going to be good? Or is it vice versa? Do I have that backwards?
This might be the last one. Well, he has hair in the second one too. But I think as he gets balder, I don't know, because it goes full circle. I don't know what.
Right, exactly. But yeah, he's never been better. The scene where he's telling Powell, what he wants him to tell his wife if they don't come out of this is heartbreaking. But you believe it, you buy it, just as much as you buy him being snarky to Hans and saying I was always partial to Roy Rogers and things like that. But yeah, everybody is great. And I tell you, there's one performance there are two moments that I want to point out that are very small and subtle. But at the very beginning of the movie, the guy who's telling him to make fists with his toes.
Yep.
First of all, that actor's name is Robert Lesser, and he's one of my favorite character actors. He's in a trifecta of movies in a 2-year period. He was in this. He played a sleazy agent in Ernest Saves Christmas the same year, so that's 2 Christmas classics that he's in. And the year before, he had a small role in The Monster Squad in 1987. So he gets a lot of play around the holidays in my house.
Sure.
But I love that scene because, again, he's just kind of a pro. These are types that they've cast here. And the other one is, and I don't have the actor's name in front of me, but he's the Asian guy who's part of Hans's crew, who is guarding one of the doors, and he's looking. There's a snack bar there, and he stops. He looks around and he grabs a candy bar and starts eating it.
Yep.
The actor ad-libbed that, and David Toohey, the screenwriter, said that actor, his character lived longer because I laughed so hard when I saw that I changed the script to make sure he got killed near the end of the movie.
Yeah, I heard that too. Yeah, Al Leong. I had that.
Al Leong, thank you.
Yep, I had that myself for under props when he grabs that lobby candy. Yeah, no, genius. Yeah. Like, this is how you get people to like you.
Like, I'm just going to do it. Yeah.
So great. So I love
But yeah,
those
and
ad
like you
libs at
said,
work.
everybody is doing exactly what they need to do here. Bonnie Bedelia as the wife. Is it Bonnie Bedelia?
Hmm.
Yeah, Bonnie Bedelia. For some reason, that didn't sound right when I said it, but yeah, Bonnie Bedelia is great. You believe everything that she does. You understand why she was with John McClane for so long, but you also understand why it didn't work out because she's too smart for it.
Right.
And you also understand that she will, if things had gone differently, she might have ended up running this company. But you contrast her with Ellis, and she's doing it the right way. And again, I could go on about the acting here, but it's top to bottom. Freaking Al Powell, Reginald Vell Johnson.
Hmm.
How great was he?
Yeah.
He's got that monologue about the kid that he shot,
Got
and
a ray gun.
everybody has a
Yep.
moment. This is like an ensemble play that is just being played out because it's in one setting. This you could conceivably do a stage version of Die Hard with
You
these
could.
characters, and they each have their own moment. It would be a great showcase.
Yeah, and I love that you brought up the fist with your toes. That was like the first thing I wrote because what that pays off. You talked about that earlier. Like every
Yep,
little thing pays off. Like that's why he doesn't have his shoes on, and then we have the scene with the glass and all of that stuff. So it's not wasted. None of this is wasted.
it's not the Script Notes podcast. The Craig Mazin and John August. I don't know if you're familiar with it. Won't be the last time I reference it, I'm sure. They did a deep dive. They did a whole episode on just this script, and it was phenomenal to listen to because these are two guys that know what they're doing, and they were talking about just the intricacy of the script and how everything pays off. And it almost seems like a paint by number script, but it's only because they got to the end and they said, okay, how do we? They sort of reverse engineered it. I feel like the writers did. They said, we got here. How did we get here? Okay, to get him to this point, we've got to do this. To get him there, we've got to do this. And so everything was just so meticulously planned out that it's just like a puzzle.
Right. So I had a hard time writing dialogue for this because pretty much I wanted to put everything Alan Rickman said,
Right.
and then I would try and read it, and it wouldn't be nearly as good as him. So I will leave that.
Yes.
Except for I had
It,
one. There was one when it's the scene where he's talking to he's talking to Theo. Theo's downstairs and he's waiting, like the last lock I can't unlock. And he says, there's this switch in the middle. He says, "It's Christmas, Theo. It's the time of miracles." And he's all happy. And then he turns super fast, looks at Carl and says, "Hunt that little shit down and get those detonators." And it's just like completely just 180 where he's charming and laughing and kind of silly almost. And then it's just like he's ruthless. He's
oh,
flipped the switch.
absolutely.
It's so great.
It's and that's what he did. And Rickman always made it look easy. You never caught him acting, and he always made it look so easy. But he also always looked like he was just having a ball. I just watched Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves for the first time in a long time, a couple of nights
Yeah.
ago. Pam had never seen it, and she's a huge Alan Rickman fan. And at the end, she's like, "Okay, Die Hard was my favorite. Then Galaxy Quest was my favorite. This may actually be my favorite Alan Rickman. Him as the sheriff of Nottingham. But
Yep.
like you said, everything about this, he's oily, but you're not repulsed by him. You want to spend time with him, but you also want to see him get what's coming to him. And of course, there's the yippee-ki-yay mother.
Yeah.
Is one of the greatest lines in cinema history,
Absolutely.
in my opinion. It is some of the best dialogue in any action movies ever. And the fact that most of Willis's lines all sound ad-libbed is a credit to the writer as well as the actor. When I say he's never been better, it all just seems tossed off. He and Rickman both. It all just seems tossed off. But when you stop and think about it, there's a lot of really great work going on there.
I agree. And yeah, I'm glad that you brought up the yippee because you have to include that. Since it's a family show, we didn't have to drop the F-bomb, which is a nice thing about Live Free or Die Hard. You can watch the PG version where you don't actually get to hear it.
Right.
But I do also, I will give, as much as he is a jerk and is made fun of throughout this movie and pretty much everything he's in, Paul Gleason as Dwayne Robinson has one of the funniest lines in this film. Gonna need some more FBI guys, I guess. Just throw his hands in the air. I don't know what to do.
And again, he was a pro. You never caught him acting. You believed everything you did. You're gonna need some more FBI guys.
So good. There's this moment of just, it's brutal and like, oh man, everything's going, and he's just, let's throw in a joke.
Well,
So
and I love Al's commenting on everything after the FBI guy shows up. He just looks over at him and he goes, "Want a breath mint?"
oh my gosh, so funny. Movie's so funny. Speaking of performance, though, just scrolling down to body language, facial expressions, there was so many good things. Just again, I'm just looking at really it's Willis and Rickman more than anything. John's panicked face in the barely open door, which is basically the movie poster,
Yeah.
where he's kind of figuring out. We had that you talked about it earlier, where it's a lot of it's his perspective. Like you see him looking out in the hall, and you just see his point of view, and it's just like the camera's jerking side to side as he's desperately trying to find out what's happening. We're hearing the shotgun or the machine guns, but we don't see anything because he doesn't see anything. So good.
Well, and the casting of Bruce Willis, I think, is what makes this movie. Because it's an action movie in the late '80s. Can you imagine what this movie would have been had it been Sylvester Stallone or Arnold Schwarzenegger in that role?
It'd be forgettable. It'd just be
It'd
one
be
more on the
forgettable.
pile.
Yeah, it would just be a loud action movie. Bruce Willis is an everyman. You know, he's missing some of his hair. He's stuck with no shoes and a tank top for the majority of the movie. And which I have a story about the tank top when we get to costumes.
Oh, I'm so excited.
And the movie just would not work. As great as Alan Rickman is, Alan Rickman's performance is only as good as it is because he has Bruce Willis to play off of, and vice versa. You know, you get these two. You know, Bruce Willis, I would never call him a master thespian, but in the right role, he was better than anybody.
Sure.
And Alan Rickman was better than anybody, full stop. But yeah, that's exactly it. You're absolutely right. That there was that one, and we already talked about the scene where Al Ling was looking at the candy, and you see him look around, and you see the thought cross his mind.
Yep.
And it's hilarious. And we haven't even mentioned Argyle yet, but that is a character that is problematic for a lot of people. But I always loved him.
Yeah.
And he's another one. It's a small character, but he's got an arc of his own. And again, everything he does is real. You know, John sits in the front with him and he's, "Oh, sorry, the girl's off this week," and he has to throw his trash in the back. And he says, "I used to drive a cab. People expect a little chit chat." I believe that guy was a cab driver.
100%. I've never had a doubt.
Everybody in this movie should have had a career like Bruce Willis's, and it's a shame that most of them didn't.
Yeah. I also had for facial expressions, I have John's face when the C4 goes off and it starts coming back up the elevator shaft, because that feels real to me.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
It's not like he's done that before. You don't know what's going to happen.
He panics and he runs. It's the exact same expression any of us would have when you see that coming.
Exactly.
And then when he there was another point when he says he's when he's throwing he's about to swing off the building, and he is terrified. He is absolutely terrified. He's not sure it's going to work. And again, you wouldn't see that with a quote unquote action star in that role. And that's why it works.
I was researching that scene too, and that was one of the very first scenes they did, which I think is interesting. And it didn't go well at first. And what I read was they thought maybe he had died, and they had to make sure he would, which is funny. And I was like, this is why they started it with that scene first, because then you wouldn't have to do reshoots. So you just do that scene until somebody lives, and then you can keep that guy.
Right.
It's a little dark, but I was like, that's the only reason I can think of why you would do that first. It's incredibly dangerous.
Right. Yeah, if you're gonna have to recast, you don't want to have to shoot. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good note for any aspiring filmmakers out there who are listening.
Do your most dangerous stunt first. There's a couple of great Rickman facial expressions I noticed differently this time, because he's so smooth through most of it. Like that one piece of dialogue I mentioned earlier, where he kind of shifts. There's two things where there's like this little chink in the armor. The first time he notices that the detonators are missing, he's not afraid, but he might be a little bit worried. You can see on his face.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he finds out that John's from New York, when they're having that conversation face to face, like there's this look of shock on his face. Like, this guy's not just like some security guard or some local guy. What the heck is happening?
What is he doing here? Well, and when he realizes who he is, there's that look of realization on his face.
Oh, yeah.
And again, he's not doing very much outwardly, but you see everything behind his eyes. And it's, again, he's one of those actors that he makes me mad as an actor, because he makes it look so easy. He makes it look effortless. And I guarantee you, every wheel in his mind was turning in every scene in this movie. And that's a great example of one of them. Yeah, when he realizes who he's talking to, And when he says, he looks up and he sees his name is Clay, Bill Clay, and he just slips into that persona right then. It's so good.
Yeah, he's doing so much of that with his face. I know. It's like I feel like I need to get an Alan Rickman marathon going.
He played Rasputin in I think it was a BBC production that is not available. You cannot. It was on DVD at one point or VHS, but you cannot find it anywhere. And I'm dying to get my hands on a copy of that. Can you imagine?
Yes, that sounds amazing. I would love to see that.
I think it was from like 1985 or something like that.
Wow. So we're down to costumes, hair and makeup. He misses his shoes. That's my first thing I had. And then you wanted to talk about the tank top. I would love to hear what you had for the tank top.
Okay, so I have a friend who works as a screenwriter in LA. His girlfriend, she may be his fiance, they may actually be married now. That tells you how close we are. Is a costumer. And at one point there was like, I don't know if you would call it an exhibit, but there was like an installation of the costumes from Die Hard. That they were specifically his tank tops.
Nice.
And they told the story of the movie through his tank tops. There were something like 15 or 20 different tank tops that had different levels of soiling, different layers of blood, different layers of grime and dirt on them. And you could go start to finish and see basically the plot of the film through these. And it blew my mind. I didn't get to see it, but he sort of online gave us kind of a rundown of it, and he showed a few of the photos, and it was just amazing. And I was jealous of him because he had his girlfriend with him who was explaining all of it to him every step of the way, because it's something she had like studied intensely. Nice. And it was just absolutely amazing. And that's, again, when you talk about what makes this a classic, and it's the fact that there was the attention to detail did not stop at any level. Even this tank top, we want to make sure that we have the appropriate, that this matches the last scene. We know this is scene 5, shot A. So this next one, if we go back to this one, we have to mark this one to know which one to go back to. And it's flawless all the way through. And that's just one more level of attention that was paid to this film. There's a reason that it's the classic that it is.
I love that you know that, because I'm watching this and going, that's one t-shirt. It just gets progressively dirtier.
Nope.
But no, it's like a whole crap load of t-shirts.
Yep.
That's awesome. Movie magic, people. So I have a question. Is it weird to you that Hans Gruber is dressed really nice in a suit and the rest of his crew is all just very casually dressed? Because that's really stood out like really strange to me today.
Not at all. Oh, by the way, the Rasputin film was actually 1996. So that's even a bigger crime that is not readily available. Yeah, it didn't bother me at all, because these guys, who knows? You think about like a band, guys that play together in a band, Sure. They typically don't hang out when they're not touring, so they just come together to tour. And I kind of feel like this is the group he's put together. And this is exactly what he would wear. And this is the persona he's trying to put across. He's trying to convince them that he is this posh, very well-educated, very erudite European, terrorist, very intelligent terrorist. And the rest of the guys, they're the crew. They're his crew. So it never bothered me at all, especially because each character, again, their costume matched their personality. You had the guy that was up front that had the big thick Texas accent that's wearing cowboy boots, and he's got the mullet and everything and the big forehead.
Yep.
Perfect. Alexander Godunov and his brother are both dressed like Euro trash, which is what they were.
Yep.
Or I guess Scandinavian trash. Then you had, I can't remember, was it Courtney B. Vance? No, it wasn't Courtney B. Vance.
Clarence Gilliard is Theo.
Thank you, Clarence Gilliard. The C threw me. He's got the glasses, which is what you expect from a computer nerd, and he's dressed sort of very unassumingly. And can we talk about his entrance when he's talking about the basketball game?
Yep.
And he comes in and just shoots a guy very nonchalantly.
2 points. Yep.
Tells you everything you need to know about that character. He's a sociopath, but he's very funny. And again, we like to spend time with him. So no, it never bother me at all, because if they were all dressed alike, it wouldn't make sense, because that doesn't match their characters.
See, I love that. Great explanation. Yeah, I think bothered is too strong a word anyway, but it definitely sets him apart, not only from this crew, but like really from action movie villains at all, right? Like we hadn't really seen this kind of like he's not a physical match for John. He's just infinitely smarter than him.
Right. But yeah, and that makes him even more dangerous.
Exactly.
Because he's planned everything out and he's thought of every eventuality except for John McClane. He is the monkey in the wrench, as he calls himself.
That's great line. Flying new I'm monkey in the wrench. Anything else with performance before we move down to setting and design that you want to talk about?
No, I think I've probably swung that well dry. Although I will say, and I've talked about every single person in the movie. Every single person in the movie. I think it's Rick Dukeman that is the guy that they're trying to get to shut off the grid. He's upset about it. The guy who's ringing up Powell at the convenience store is just so perfectly cast that I assume that guy works at that convenience store and probably is still working there. Whoever cast this thing did such a good job that you know who everybody is. Robert Davi and I can't ever think of the other actor's name who played the Agents Johnson and Johnson. Perfect. And they put Robert Davi in that cap, the baseball cap that he turns around backwards. That's exactly what that douchebag would wear in that scenario.
Exactly.
Oh God, it's perfect. I love this movie.
So good. Mainly setting the design mainly around Fox Plaza. You said you've been there in Century City.
Yeah, a couple of times.
I'm so jealous.
Yeah, once at night and once in the day when we were in Anaheim or for Celebration back in May. I took a day and tooled around LA and drove up there and got out and actually I think I yelled yippee-ki-yay mother, but I couldn't get out and go in because it's still a working building even though there's not anybody really there. But I couldn't really park and get out and go in without getting kicked out of the building. Yeah. But it's very easy to find and you go in there now and it's kind of dead. There's not a whole lot that goes on there, but yeah, it's very easy to find.
It should have like a plaque or something.
I think there probably is somewhere.
Yeah.
But I just didn't get out to see it, to look at it.
That's so cool. Set decoration. I love the line about the limo amenities. CD, CB, TV, telephone, full bar, VHS.
Yeah, VHS. CD Excellent. And VHS. They are the height of technology.
And we do. The thing that really stuck out to me this time was all the wood and the stone in the Nakatomi building. And at first I thought, well, that's really dated, very 80s. And then I did some more research on that. And really what they're doing is they're trying to do like an homage to the Falling Water house, the Frank Lloyd Wright designed house.
Right.
So I was like, oh, okay. So that's what it is. It's dated and snooty.
Right. Exactly. And again, you talk about the set decoration, going back to what I was saying about that pinup calendar. That is like a signpost to let you know where you are in the building.
Yep.
Here's one thing though that we haven't talked about that I wanted to get your opinion on. When McClane shows up and he at the building at the beginning and he goes in and he says, I'm here to see Holly McClane. He says, well, the guy said, just look it up on the machine there. So he looks it up and he says, such and such, whatever. He goes, yeah, 30th floor. They're the only ones still in the building. If they're the only ones still in the building, why didn't he just tell him to go up there to the 30th floor?
So the movie can happen. So we can see that it's Holly Gennaro. But no, I noticed that too. Every time I watch it, this is the only one. It's the only ones in the building. You say that. Then why are you making him look in the stupid dated computer?
I assume it's a security thing. So he has to actually find a name. So that he's not just saying I'm some Yahoo that's going to go up and crash the party. I'm giving the movie that. But anyway.
There you go. Yeah, that's the in-universe reason.
Yes. But you're but the Falling Water thing I can definitely see, and I love that they had it under construction so that they were less beholden to making everything look like an office building or an office floor. Mm-hmm. And again, it gives them a whole lot more stuff to play with as far as scenes and settings.
Yeah, I just love the fact that they just use their under construction building, their own building in the movie, and like have that be part of the plot that it's under construction.
Okay. Probably saved on they probably rented it to themselves and made money on the deal.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Some other great props in this one. We talked about the computer system, super dated, but that's fine. It's also very specific to Nakatomi, so that kind of works. The picture frame with John and his family is massively important as a prop. I love how she puts it down in anger at the beginning, and then it's just down this whole time. And then they have that great reveal when Hans figures out their relationship. I've always liked the flash grenades. They kind of look like Oreos to me, or maybe ding dongs. Those are
Oh
weird.
yeah, like hockey pucks a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
You'd think me as a former fat kid would have gone with ding dongs, but I always went with hockey pucks for some reason.
Um, let's see. I mentioned the lobby candy, the walkie talkies. That's another just crucial thing. I mean, you have this whole thing where you have your main character and your antagonist that don't spend a lot of time together. Most of it is done over walkie talkie, and I just think
Yeah,
that's awesome.
it is, and they're able, the way the editing is done, they're able to build that rapport and make it seem like they really are connecting. And who knows, maybe if I had to guess, I would guess that each actor was on the other end of the line when they were recording those scenes, just out of courtesy. I don't know that for a fact, but that's how it feels, because especially he and Reginald Vell Johnson have such a good rapport and good chemistry that you have to imagine that they did. But who knows? And this is another movie that would not work in the age of cell phones.
Right.
Would be so easy for everything else to get resolved.
I love that. Nothing wrong with that. Let's have some more period pieces set in 1988 so we can get rid of that.
Exactly.
I'm looking through characters. I don't think there's anybody we haven't talked about. We just raved about everybody for on purpose. It's been well deserved. They're great.
I think so. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anybody else other than the guy playing the boss, Joe Takagi. That guy's great. He's he's very warm and inviting, but you also get the impression that he probably is a pretty shrewd and ruthless businessman at the same time.
Yeah,
but that he does care about his people.
Makes the joke about the Pearl. We didn't get you with Pearl Harbor, so
Pearl Harbor. Tape decks.
Tape decks, yeah.
Well, and of course we have when McClane arrives at the airport, he's California. We never lets us forget that he's from New York and these California people are weird.
Yep.
And the only thing I wish that big teddy bear had come into play at some point, had been a foil for something at some point. Because Argyle is just sitting in the back seat with it.
Yeah. Well, here's a question. John has 2 kids. Are they going to share that one teddy bear?
Probably.
They're little kids. I don't know. Maybe you should get 2 smaller bears.
You also get the impression that he's also maybe not the most attentive of husbands or parents, so it's possible that he forgot that he had 2 kids. Or maybe that's for Holly. Maybe that's what he thinks is going to win her over, as a giant teddy.
There you go. Well, spoiler alert for you do know this, right? For Die Hard 5, that it's his son that's in that one?
Yes.
Okay, good. Yeah, so we get to see both of them as adults, so yeah. So hero's journey then. There were some interesting things that I found for this one, where there was one reviewer that had written that the feet thing was like stigmata, which I thought was an interesting take. That he's this is his penance through physical punishment, and that's kind of his arc going through this redemption thing, baptism through fire. And I thought that was kind of interesting.
It's interesting. I don't think it's necessarily unfounded, but I also don't know that it's necessarily something that was conscious. I think it was probably just, hey, this is one more obstacle we can throw in this guy's path. But again, who's to say? It's not without merit at all. I can definitely see that.
Yeah, I don't know if I subscribe to that either. I just thought that was kind of an interesting take. I tend to think it's more just like, we're just going to put this guy through the ringer.
Right.
He's not he's not Arnold Schwarzenegger that we had seen, or even Stallone, right? He's going to be damaged. It's going to be a lot harder for him to get through this, which makes him more relatable.
Exactly. And you talk about the hero's journey. I guess he is sort of a reluctant hero, because he doesn't want to have to get involved, but he knows there's nothing else but for him to get involved. But it's the last thing he wanted to do. And he tries to get the authorities here to take care of it. He tries to do the right thing, but when he realizes he has to take care of this on his own, that's when he just sort of is, again, he's a very reluctant hero.
Which moves me down to the first of my final thoughts, I'll just mention it here, was how much better would it have been if the police or the FBI doesn't even show up? Like, do they actually help at all?
Well, they
Al does.
Well, Al does. They have to show up because that was part of Gruber's plan. They're the ones who had to shut off the grid for that final, because he was going to call him regardless.
Yeah.
His plan was to call them regardless. They just got there
True.
earlier before he planned them to. So,
Yeah.
but no, I think it was great because it's sort of you talked about it being sort of like RoboCop in that regard, and it is a little bit of a satire on the militarization of the police, because they get this big tank coming through that they're going to bash in,
Send in the car.
and they send in the car, and then they start burning alive inside of it. You talk about being you trapped by your own hubris, and I think they had to show up, and I think they were as much of a foil for McClane as the terrorists were in a lot of ways, even more so.
Agreed. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that pretty much the legacy of Die Hard was, and it's not so much now, but for pretty much the entire next decade, it was the blueprint for just about every other action movie that came out.
Yeah, Speed was Die Hard on a bus, which was one of the better knockoffs, which I believe was also John McTiernan, if I'm not mistaken.
Jan de Bont.
Jan de Bont.
Second one.
That was it.
Yeah, he did the first one. So it's got the DNA of that.
Yeah,
I think he did both of them actually. I really liked Under Siege. I think that may be my favorite Die Hard knockoff. Die Hard on a battleship. Or
There's another one.
Die Hard on a mountain.
Well, Executive Decision is another one. That's Die Hard in a plane.
Yep.
With Kurt Russell as in the Bruce Willis role. Only he's in a tuxedo most of the time. Really underrated action movie. A lot of fun.
So I have my one gripe about that movie though is I went in expecting it to be a Steven Seagal movie. I don't know why I thought that, because he was in it.
Well, because he was featured heavily in the promotions, and he dies 5 minutes in, which is what made me like it even more, because I hate Steven Seagal.
Well, see, that makes sense, because I was rooting for him, and then I was like, oh no, this is a bait and switch. Okay.
Yeah. No, it's Kurt Russell's film.
That bugged me. I could probably watch that again. I do enjoy Kurt Russell. Hey, look at that segue for our next film. He's good too. I like him too. Oh, two more. Passenger 57. Wesley Snipes, Die Hard on a Plane.
Always Bet on Black. I've never seen that, but there's apparently a shot in that where he looks directly into the camera.
I have not seen it either.
And they didn't cut it.
I missed that one. And Air Force One also, which is, I love that movie.
That's a great movie.
I'd like to do that one as well.
Wolfgang Peterson, yeah.
Get off my plane. Yeah, just, oh my gosh, so good. Gary Oldman is a bad guy? Stop it. What else? Anything else you have for final thoughts? I have one more, but I want to give you a chance to jump in and see if you had anything else you wanted to mention. Do we have
no? That's all I want to mention. I'll just say I say this a lot on a variation on this a lot on Star Wars Splash page. But if you haven't seen this Die Hard, why do you hate movies?
Right?
If you have seen it, go watch it again at Christmas time or anytime. Bruce Willis has said unequivocally it's not a Christmas movie. I still watch it at Christmas because I want to watch it all the time, and that's just as good an excuse as any.
There you go. Well, that was the last thing I was going to say. Was it? I tend to. I'm on the side of it is a Christmas movie. I think
just any excuse to watch it, and Christmas is as good an excuse as any. Yeah.
Really, that kind of comes out that way. But like, I enjoy having the argument for fun. You're like, look how he's separated from his family and.
Well, and here's the thing. Here's what makes it a Christmas. Here's what makes it a Christmas movie.
Yeah.
The fact that it's Christmas is integral to the plot because it is a Christmas party. Although, why are they having a Christmas party on Christmas Eve so they can't be home with their families?
Horrible.
I have the same issue with the first Santa Claus movie. But the fact that it is Christmas, that's why they don't want to cut the power. And that's why they have trouble getting anybody to respond, because it's Christmas and they think there's a bunch of crackpots, and that's why he's coming out there. He's coming out there for Christmas. So it actually is. It is central to the plot that it happened at Christmas. That's all I'm going to say.
You heard it here, folks. But let us hear. If you're, guys, let us know. Is Die Hard a Christmas movie? I may have to put up a poll. I think I will. After this releases, just to see what our audience thinks, because I'm very curious to see what the
I'm betting it'll be right at 50-50, leaning slightly to the side of Christmas.
Yep, you're probably right. Oh well, I'm still interested. I'm still gonna do it. So, Jeff, why? Before we get out of here, anything new coming from Marvin Dog Media or your Star Wars Splash page? Anything you want to plug?
Well, no, just keep listening. We Marvin Dog Media, we've got the pilot episode that comes out every other week. The Saturday morning supercast that comes out every other week. Those come out on Tuesdays. So any Tuesday, you're either going to get the pilot episode or Saturday morning supercast, rather. Star Wars Splash Page comes out every Wednesday. The latest episode, we had a couple of really good books. The end of the Obi-Wan Kenobi miniseries that they did, a 5-issue miniseries that is just some phenomenal writing. The 4th issue is a Heart of Darkness / Apocalypse Now tale. I mean, even the cover and the story. It's when I was reading, I'm like, this is Heart of Darkness. This is Joseph Conrad. It's great. Talking toys, we just did every October we have to do a toy related to monsters of some sort. So we did a show about the Monster Force toy line, which I was not familiar with, but which is actually very cool. So go check that out if you want to see the Wolfman and Dracula as superheroes and supervillains. It's kind of fun. Other than that, that's pretty much it.
Oh, good. And we'll have links to all that in the show notes. So check that out, guys. I told Jeff before we started recording that I've been mainlining the pilot episode. There's so many good things in there. So
thank you. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. That's one of the few shows that I record that I do sometimes go back and listen to episodes because I just like the topic. I'm just a huge TV geek. But yeah, we have a lot of fun, and I like listening to my friends give me a hard time. So that's always fun.
Absolutely. So as we close, we just want to say thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to connect with us, you can find us on Twitter and Facebook. Email us at readingbetweenreels@gmail.com or use the SpeakPipe app on our website. If you enjoyed the show, please leave a review on your favorite podcast catcher. We'd love to hear your feedback, and it really helps us get the word out about the podcast. If you haven't yet, please join our Facebook group. It's a safe place to share your thoughts and discuss all things related to movies. And one last thing, our next episode will be a review of Tombstone. Send us an email or voicemail about your favorite moments from Tombstone. We'll share it on the next episode.